Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. So, as we talked about earlier this week, Tesla has made it official their ride hailing service is active in the Bay Area. And the geofence is the one that we shared earlier this week. Some people are saying that Tesla is doing this without any of the regulatory bodies knowing what's going on in the Bay Area, but just to disprove that, on July 11th, there was an hour-long meeting where some of Tesla's regulatory counsel, as well as several of its technical staff, including the lead engineer for the Cybercab, were all a part of a meeting. And then a second meeting was arranged for last Thursday. This with the same Tesla attendees, but a larger showing from the DMV. The DMV regularly engages with the autonomous vehicle industry before, during, and after testing. They noted the agency recently met with Tesla to discuss its plans to test AVs in the state. And Tesla did notify the CPUC it intended to grow its existing transportation service and offer rides to employees, friends, and family, as well as some members of the public across the entire Bay Area. However, this ride-hailing service for Tesla in the Bay Area has its challenges already, as people are reporting that it's pretty difficult to actually hail a ride. Last night, the app for Tesla Economics said no rides available nearby, please come back later. Mars ran into the same situation. The app said no rides available nearby. And unfortunately, this is a problem now even in Austin. Tesla Chan is saying he can't get a Robotaxi because it's a high service demand. At that time in the app, no rides were available. Now yes, I know that Joe Tetmeyer said Tesla is expanding the number of vehicles in the fleet in Austin, but as far as we know, they have only added one more vehicle. Meaning, as far as we can tell, we're still under 15 vehicles total in Austin, and it's likely between 11 and 13. But remember, just because you see a new Robotaxi with a different license plate doesn't mean that was an additional one. It could have replaced one of the existing vehicles. And how many vehicles does Tesla have operating in the Bay Area right now? I have not seen anything reputable, but I'm pretty confident it's nowhere near the number that is needed to cover an area this large. Now, yes, I know it's invite only and Tesla is only giving out a handful of invites, but as you've seen, even with those select few invitees, there are already issues with them hailing rides. So yes, it's great that Tesla is launching with this massive geofence across the Bay Area, but that also brings with it some challenges as well. So of course, Waymo's coverage in the Bay Area is a lot smaller than Tesla's, but the last update we got was that Waymo has about 600 vehicles in its fleet in the Bay Area. So it's pretty easy to see how Tesla can run into challenges having a geofence this large, pushing, 2 hours north to south for a drive if they only have, 5 or 15 vehicles available. When it comes to pricing in the Bay Area, we have very limited data. Holmars did say his first trip was $69, and for a comparable Uber X trip, that would have been $80.94. And remember, that number is before a tip. But in my opinion, a better apples to apples comparison would be the Uber Comfort, which in this case came in at $113. Those prices were for a 34-mile trip. And for Tesla, these numbers break down to $2.02 per mile. So look, the reason people get excited about this, despite the current limitations, is because of how the numbers start to work out. Let's call this a 1-hour ride for Tesla, 15 minutes to get to Omar, and then a 45-minute ride, and the Tesla vehicle gets paid $70. We know a Tesla vehicle can operate over 20 hours a day, as the only downtime would be for charging and cleaning if need be. And just to be ultra conservative, if a Tesla offers around 15 rides a day and the average revenue is $30, that's $450 per day. Of course, that number could be over $1,000 per day in a more aggressive scenario. And then you run those numbers over a year, and Tesla selling cars to people becomes an afterthought because the utilization and the revenue will be so much higher, even with this dynamic pricing model that's undercutting the industry and is before the Cybercab. The good news, Zach said that Tesla's ride-hailing service in the Bay Area does indeed work on the freeway. And as you can see, the vehicles Tesla is using in the Bay Area have this TCP on the back, which is that Transportation Charter Permit. And there is no Robotaxi badging on the side, and Tesla is not using the Robotaxi terms yet. That's because there is a Tesla employee in the driver's seat. No, they're not driving the vehicle, they're just supervising FSD, similar to how you or I would. Tesla Economics shared some pricing data for one of his rides, which was 15.9 miles. Tesla's ride hail cost $32.74, which breaks down to $2.06 per mile. The same trip via Uber Comfort Electric was $58.16, which broke down to $3.66 per mile. So, as a consumer, if you could save $25 for one trip, would you do it? As long as wait times are reasonable and Tesla continues to prove out its safety numbers. Unless you're anti-Tesla, there's really no reason not to. But as we said, Tesla certainly has some work to do when it comes to availability and wait times. There's still plenty of confusion out there about the regulations in California, but if you actually go to the CPUC and its regulations, you'll find there are two separate programs, one for drivered autonomous vehicles and the other for driverless autonomous vehicles. And the commission has the authority to regulate both drivered and driverless passenger service provided by transportation chartered permits, which is Tesla's current situation. And here's the section of what's required for a company like Tesla to apply for driverless deployment permits. I just want to make it clear there is nothing in this section that says anything about a specific number of miles that a company like Tesla would have to have accident-free before it can apply for that driverless permit. So if you hear something like Tesla needs 50 or 55,000 miles accident-free before it can have that next driverless permit, that's not accurate. Now, yes, earlier this year, there was discussion of changing some of these regulations, but as far as I can tell, none of that has actually been placed into law. So yes, California is requiring Tesla to have someone in the driver's seat right now. In another month or two, Tesla is expecting to remove that supervisor and then likely put them in the passenger seat or remove them altogether once the next driverless permit is obtained, which will happen after Tesla can show the authorities it has the safety data to validate it, just like Waymo did. And Tesla has been testing with employees for over a year, so Tesla may be able to use that data as well. But again, right now, there's no specific mileage number that Tesla needs to achieve. Shifting to the Robotaxi network in Austin, Joe Tetmeyer shared a chart of his own saying the formula of $1 flat rate plus the number of miles times $1 seems to hold. Here's his chart with all of his ride data, and his cost per mile across all of these 14 rides worked out to $1.19 per mile. And then Cern Basher took the data that Tesla Chan shared for his 11 rides across Austin as of this week. And looking at the bottom half of this chart, if we stick with that $1 base fare plus the per mile cost, we're looking at a total cost per mile of $1.23 using that updated framework. And the way things are going, at least in Austin, Tesla is pretty comfortably set to be under that $2 per mile mark. And this is, of course, with the Model Y. So next year, once Tesla starts rolling out the Cybercab, those numbers should come down dramatically in time. And yes, these numbers are with the safety monitors. But I would say there's an argument to be made that Tesla is running this dynamic pricing model as if the safety monitors were removed, meaning we might not see a dramatic price decrease whenever the safety monitors are actually taken out of the vehicle. But that is just an assumption, as we're never going to get the intimate details of how Tesla is approaching this new pricing model. But arguably, the most important situation is what Tesla Yoda pointed out on the Tesla careers page. If you search for vehicle operator, you find 10 different job listings, and they're in Houston, Texas, Tampa, Florida, Claremont, Florida, Miami, Florida, Brooklyn, New York, Henderson, Nevada, Palo Alto, California, Austin, Texas, Tempe, Arizona, and Farmers Branch, Texas. And for me, the Brooklyn, New York one was interesting because historically, New York has been a bit more restrictive when it comes to autonomous testing, but we know that Waymo has been pushing to change the regulations regulations. Just be prepared. I think no matter what city Tesla launches in and no matter what the regulations are, Tesla will start with a safety monitor of some kind. But as we know, Elon has said he's expecting Tesla to be in many cities operating some form of Robotaxi and or a ride-hail network by the end of the year. So at this point, I'd like to remind everybody it's only been just over 1 month since Tesla launched the Robotaxi network in Austin. I know it feels longer than that, but we have to have some perspective here. I know we all want safety riders gone and hundreds of vehicles in the fleet, but we said all year before the launch Tesla was going to do this very cautiously, and we said it might feel painfully slow to start. And I would argue it hasn't really felt that slow given the Austin expansion and the huge Bay Area geofence and the word that the 10x expansion in Austin is right around the corner. But on the other hand, we're still under 20 or 30 vehicles total, so it depends what you value the most. For me, I want Tesla to expand its geographic coverage as fast as possible to spread the word, gather the data, and build out the app operations. But I will say the fact that Tesla is not expanding the number of vehicles probably means they're not going to ramp up that number significantly until the safety monitors can be removed, as Tesla really is not in the business of operations that lose money. And with customers requesting rides to no availability, I cannot understand any other reason why Tesla would not just add a few more vehicles to the fleet, other than the fact that they don't want to pay for hundreds of safety monitors. Elon's compensation is going to be a bigger part of the story here in the back half of this year, and Elon said, just FYI, I do not have personal loans at this time against Tesla stock. He said also the taxes on the options that he could exercise if his 2018 comp plan gets overturned in the Delaware Supreme Court, meaning he actually gets it, the taxes on those options are around 45%, so his net gain in voting control is only about 4% rather than the 7% many of us were expecting. He said, it is worrying in that I don't want to build millions of robots and then potentially be ousted by activists and unable to ensure that public safety remains of paramount importance. Now, as of last year, Elon had pledged about 235 million Tesla shares as collateral. But as he just said, since then, he's effectively cleared out all of those personal loans. Now, just to use round numbers because it's easier to remember, right now, if Elon were to not get his 2018 compensation plan, his voting control percentage of Tesla would be around 13%. And on the other hand, if he actually gets his 2018 compensation plan and then he exercises all of those 304 million shares that were part of that plan, that would hypothetically take him to about 20% voting control, which is exactly where that around 7% increase in voting control number was coming from. But what Elon is saying is in the future, he might need to sell some of those new Tesla shares to cover the tax bill. So as we like to say, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So just know if Elon gets his 2018 pay package, when it's all said and done, his voting control of Tesla is only likely to be around 17%, not the 20+% we were expecting. So this means that the board will still need to find a way to take Elon from that 17% expected voting control if he gets his 2018 compensation plan up to that 25% he wants to feel comfortable leading Tesla into its AI future. But it's always good to know Elon does not have any personal loans against Tesla stock, which just lowers the risk that he would eventually be margin called and need to sell more Tesla stock. The US Department of Energy is spewing nonsense on X. They said wind and solar require backup from peaker gas plants or batteries, which cost more than 3 times as much as baseload power. Adding more variable resources to the grid can actually increase price spikes and power shortages. A common sense approach to America's energy sector is what will help secure our grid, which is complete nonsense, and thankfully it got community noted. They said that statement is false. Wind and solar backups like batteries batteries are increasingly cost competitive, not 3 times the base load, and displace expensive peakers. I know most of you tune in regularly, so I don't need to explain why this is so ridiculous, but I just want to say it is very frustrating having an administration that is so clueless and inept when it comes to energy and the policies and what is the right solution moving forward. There is a report that LG has received notice from Tesla that it would be difficult to secure orders for its 4680 batteries, which effectively would put the brakes on LG's plans to begin full-scale mass production in the second half of this year, because remember, most of those 4680s were supposed to go to Tesla. LG is showing signs of dismay at Tesla's recent shift in attitude. Why might Tesla be backing away from this 4680 deal? Well, the word is Tesla's push for internalization, which is vertical integration, stagnant demand, and adjustments in supply priorities with competitors. For what it's worth, LG is saying they can't really comment on the situation because of a confidentiality clause, but they did say the content in question is groundless and we can't confirm any specific details. But usually where there's smoke, there's fire. On one hand, you could say, well look, maybe Tesla's 4680 production is going better than expected and it doesn't need this supply from LG. But you could just as easily argue that, hey, the Cybertruck demand is not anywhere near where Tesla thought it would be. So even if Tesla's own 4680 production wasn't making big strides, maybe it just doesn't need this supply of cells from LG anymore like it thought that it would. And frankly, given the lack of 4680 updates from Tesla and what we know about the Cybertruck program, if I had to pick, I would lean more toward the latter. So again, this is not official, but given the Cybertruck's lack of sales at the current price point, this one really would not surprise me at all. This week, the European Transportation Safety Council has had some interesting comments about vehicles from the US. Basically, after a US trade deal with Japan, Japan will now let vehicles from the US come into Japan without going through some specific Japanese tests. And basically, in response, the European Commission is saying that EU safety and environmental standards are not up for negotiation. In the statement, they said the EU has consistently adopted some of the world's most effective vehicle safety regulations. These rules mandate technology like automated emergency braking, intelligent speed assistance, and pedestrian protection. They're also saying the US approach on vehicle automation is not compatible with EU standards. Unproven partial automation technologies have been permitted on vehicles on US roads and linked to numerous fatal collisions. The EU, meanwhile, follows standards and test requirements agreed at the EU level and at the UNECE. And notice the footnote number 4 for those fatal collisions. And what do you know? 3 of the 4 footnotes involve Tesla vehicles. Now, we're still waiting on the final details for the US and EU trade deal, but no matter what those are, the EU is clearly taking a hard-line approach when it comes to how it wants to regulate vehicles coming from the US. Now look, just to be clear on this, the European Transport Safety Council does not oversee the regulations for something like Tesla's FSD. That regulatory approval will largely be handled by the UNECE, as we've been saying. But when you have organizations like the ETSC basically pushing the UNECE, saying that, hey, the US approach on vehicle automation is not compatible with our standards, that could certainly be a reason that things are at least slowed down so more conversations can be held. Now, I really do not think this will change very much for the UNECE, but it's at least something to watch. Holmars was at the Tesla diner and he shared a quick video showing that yes, there is still indeed a pretty significant line to get in days after the opening. This was actually Tesla's first jury trial involving autopilot at the federal level. There were some jury outcomes in the past, but those were at the state level. And today, a jury found Tesla partially liable for a fatal 2019 crash in Florida, meaning Tesla was hit with $243 million in damages. An 8-person jury ruled Tesla's driver assistance tech was partially to blame for enabling the driver, George McGee, to momentarily take his eyes off the road and then failed to warn him the road was ending. Before I go on, this really was a very sad story because one individual died from it and one other was severely injured. But just to stick stick to the facts, along with the $200 million in punitive damages, the jury ordered Tesla to pay $43 million in compensatory damages. In the closing argument, Tesla's lawyer put the blame for the accident solely on the driver. He said he was fishing for his phone. It's a fact that happens in any car that isolates the cause. The cause is he dropped his cell phone. And then the plaintiff's attorney was basically arguing that Tesla promoted the autopilot feature knowing it increased the likelihood of distracting drivers. And a lot of their argument throughout the case relied on statements that Elon had made over the years. But Tesla has already said it does plan to appeal that verdict, and Elon confirmed as much on X. Tesla said today's verdict is wrong and only works to set back automotive safety and jeopardize Tesla's and the entire industry's efforts to develop and implement life-saving tech. And further than the money Tesla has to pay, this ruling would obviously be a green light for other people to try to come after Tesla now that an outcome like this would be out there. This outcome is unfortunate too because previously Tesla had faced those cases at the state level and it was found not liable both times. And there have been a handful of other times where Tesla was able to settle quietly outside of court. And the driver himself, the one that was using autopilot, said on the stand that he wasn't sure if he had heard any of Elon's comments about the technology, and he did not believe they influenced his decision to buy the car. He testified he knew his Tesla was not self-driving and that it was his job to always be alert as a driver. He said, "My concept was that it would assist me should I have a failure, or should I make a mistake. And in that case, I feel like it failed me. But the way I see it, it's just that's a flawed concept of what the technology is meant to do. It's a driver assistance feature, not a driver replacement feature, even for a short amount of time. As Tesla has made clear since day one, none of these features, autopilot, enhanced autopilot, FSD, allow you to stop paying attention for any amount of time. AKA, the driver is always ultimately responsible. And for me, it's really as simple as that. And remember, this accident was back in 2019, and the word is the vehicle was on enhanced autopilot. But again, this is not the last we will hear of this case, and here's Elon's confirmation saying that Tesla will appeal. The Tesla Megapack account said between January 1st and May 16th, Connolly, our auto bidder optimized site in Texas, was the highest earning battery project in ERCOT North Load Zone on a dollars per megawatt per year basis. Now, unfortunately, they did not share any numbers, so we can't really do much analysis with this one, but Tesla's project clearly head and shoulders above the rest, showing that Tesla not only has some of the best and most reliable hardware, but their software on the Megapack is not to be slept on. Just so you know, Tesla is definitely not the only company struggling with auto sales. We knew that Porsche was eliminating around 1,900 jobs through 2029. But Oliver Bloom just told employees additional cost-cutting measures are planned in response to dwindling sales in China and higher expenses triggered by tariffs. Bloom said in an email, "The business model, which has served us well for many decades, no longer works in its current form." If you're wondering what's going on with the markets, there's a lot going on with the employment numbers right now. Trump just said that he ordered the firing of the official in charge of compiling basic stats about the US economy. This after there was a pretty big downward revision for hiring numbers for May and June. We're talking over 250,000 jobs that basically never existed. We won't go into the details on this one. Just know right now there are plenty of questions about what's actually going on with the jobs market in the US. Ford just said on August 11th it will be a big day for the Ford team. They'll be in Kentucky to share more about their plans to design and build a breakthrough electric vehicle and a platform in the US. It's a Model T moment for us at Ford. A chance to bring a new family of vehicles to the world that offer incredible technology, efficiency, space, and features. So it sounds like that Skunk Works program that Ford has been quietly working on now for some time may have figured something out, but we'll be the judge of that come August 11th. Tesla stock closed the day at $302.63, down 1.83%, while the NDX was down 1.96%. The volume was 11% below the average. Hope you guys have a safe and wonderful weekend. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X linked below. And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.